Guys, please turn on your camera. I think we should start the event. Good afternoon, all. Let me live, let me bloom, let me shine like a beautiful moon. Let me come and see this world. Let me fly like a beautiful bird. Let me let me fly like a beautiful bird. Don't be so cruel or selfish. Let me swim, let me colorful fish. Listen my cry, listen my scream. Let me fulfill my wishes and dreams. Let me see this beautiful earth. Please don't kill me before my birth. A very good afternoon. I, Manya Tyagi, the President of NSS, is honored to welcome our Honorable Speaker, Ms. Sanjana ma'am, and our Program Officer, Mamta ma'am, and a very warm welcome to all the dear volunteers who have joined us today. Today, we are gathered here on the occasion of National Girl Child Day with a sensitive yet important topic, that is pandemic of violence of COVID-19 pandemic. Let us try to understand this more accurately with the help of Sanjana ma'am. But before that, I would like to invite Harshita for the introduction part. Over to you, Harshita.
Okay. So today I welcome Miss Sanjana K.S. ma'am on the behalf of the NSS unit of Mata Sundari College for Women. We previously have had a discussion during our events regarding the violence that has been on the rise during COVID-19. Women have been taking a major hit of this violence as a community, and to get to know more on this topic, we could not have had a better speaker. Sanjana ma'am has been working consistently on causes pertinent to women's issues and feminism. We are so glad that she is here with us today. Ma'am, we are honored to have you with us today. The stage is all yours.
Thank you so much for the introduction, and thank you for having me. Let me just say that let's not be this in formal. You don't need to call me ma'am, just call me Sanjana. That's enough. Because yeah, I just said right, I'm barely 2 or 3 years older to you, so cut the seniority and hierarchy issues, right? Okay, so before starting with that, let me just put it out there that this is more of a discussion than me just speaking, because this is not a Saturday night live that I'm going to be giving a monologue. So I would really encourage participation. And I mean, since it's not a classroom discussion, also, I need to put out, a little bit of poking in the direction in which I want to take our discussion to be. So allow me to do that. But otherwise, please feel free to ask anything in between. And if you have any inputs to give or anything that sort, all right. And also, I just wrote on the chat box, just feel free to get your teacups and coffee mugs, please. Like, don't be too formal. It's totally fine. All right. So I'll just share my screen. Um, okay, it's here. Is it visible? Is it visible?
Yes.
Yeah, please.
All right. Cool. Okay. So I'm not able to see all your faces, but I'm guessing you all can see my screens and you already know the topic of the discussion. So before beginning, with this discussion, I have certain questions regarding the experience of the pandemic that has been there for you all. So, okay, I cannot see people's faces. Is there any way to kind of manage that? Can anyone just help me out there? Okay. So can someone, like maybe the president or someone who's whoever is responsible, can take the hands for me while I pose the questions?
Okay,
Is
ma'am.
that okay?
I'll do.
Yeah. Just do that for me. I'll go to my PPT. Cool. Okay, shoot. I ruined the surprise. Okay. So so experiencing the pandemic, right? That's the first slide that I would like to begin with. And I have a few questions for you all. So number one is, how has your almost 2 year experience of being in an online mode, completely locked in your houses been? So, this is more like an icebreaker. So feel free. कोई भी language में चलेगा, be it Hindi, English. So I mean, whosoever is managing the hands, please answers collect कर लो.
So, ma'am, do you want to unmute and talk or write it in the chat box?
No, no, no. I mean, like, bata do na. Like, if someone wants to share something,
Okay, so unmute करके बोल सकते
हाँ, anyone, just take names. किसी का भी, मतलब किसी को अगर खुद बोलना है या फिर
संजना, मेरे साथ तो ये हुआ कि मुझे घर का काम भी
हाँ,
करना पड़ता है और कॉलेज के लेक्चर्स भी 3-3 लेने पड़ते हैं। इसके अलावा एनएसएस की मीटिंग्स, लॉट ऑफ ईमेल्स, इतना काम बढ़ गया ना। एक शादीशुदा पत्नी के फिर बच्चों के लिए पढ़ाना भी है उनको, उनकी भी क्लासेस देखनी है। टोटली फेड अप। पता नहीं कब ये कोरोना जाएगा और जान छूटेगी।
मैम इज एक्सपीरियंसिंग डबल बर्डन पूरी तरीके से. राइट, और कोई है? थैंक यू मैम फॉर योर एक्सपीरियंस. Anyone else who wants to chip in?
Deepika, why don't you?
Ma'am, actually in lockdown period, like मेरे पापा and all, like सारे घर पे, सब लोग घर पे थे, and like it was kind of a family reunion for me because college, schools in 12th 11th, like बहुत ज़्यादा boards का pressure था, so like family के साथ बिल्कुल time नहीं था. But 2 साल के अंदर में actually बहुत ज़्यादा हो गया ये. तो एक लिमिट तक अच्छा था, देन बाद में फिर बहुत ज़्यादा प्रॉब्लम होने लगे कि हाँ पढ़ाई नहीं करते ना. So it was kind of like पहले अच्छा लग रहा था, अब इरिटेट हो रहे हैं.
That's very relatable. I'm pretty sure सब लोग हाँ बोल रहे होंगे.
Exactly,
पहले पहले
मतलब
Ludo King and everything say, you were getting to reunite with family, but then it's like,
yeah.
अब हो गया, अब हमें room चाहिए अपना. That's cool. Anybody else? Just two more maybe.
Okay, so I'll go now, maybe. So yeah, it's again what Deepika said. These sisters, they were like away for a really long time. So lockdown जैसे ही लगा, everyone started to stay together. Starting में ठीक लग रहा था, but then it started to feel burdensome because we haven't lived together in such a long time. But I also moved from a different city, like state.
Okay.
So that was also a change. और फिर उसमें भी adjustment में there's a lot of thing going on. So it kind of took my mind off of like staying with my family, I guess. That's
That's cool. That's cool.
Assis, why don't you
Cool.
hear?
Sure. So, yes, ma'am, my experience was also kind of like Deepika only. Like, it was a family reunion definitely, since कभी ऐसा नहीं होता कि पापा हर दिन ही घर पे हो and पूरे टाइम हो. So it was a family reunion, but after some time वो actually थोड़ा irritating हो गया जब वो ने कहा like वो हर चीज में बोलने लगी कि इस टाइम तू फोन पे क्यों पढ़ क्यों नहीं रही है, कॉलेज के एग्जाम्स नहीं है, ये नहीं है. तो इट आफ्टर आई थिंक सम मंथ्स वो हो गया था कि यार क्या है, कब खोलेगा, तब नॉर्मल लाइफ कब होएगी.
मेरे पापा भी पीछे से सब सुन रहे, तो आई एम प्रोबेबली थिंकिंग ही इज आल्सो लाफिंग राइट नाउ, एंड आई एम प्रीटी श्योर उनको लग रहा होगा कि मेरा भी सेम एक्सपीरियंस ही रहा है. लाइक पहले तो ठीक था, बट देन इसके बाद इट काइंड ऑफ गेट्स लाइक, कब ऑफिस जाएंगे, हमें कब कॉलेज जाने को मिलेगा. सो आई एम गेसिंग आप लोग सब ऑनलाइन ही करे होगे, तो कैंपस भी जाने का शायद मौका नहीं मिला होगा, टू एक्सपीरियंस कॉलेज लाइफ at raw. But Khair, the next question then, that has already been answered बहुत ज़्यादा, is that what is new about your life now? And इसमें थोड़ा सोच के answer अगर दे सके तो,
Okay, so
मतलब pre pandemic and during pandemic कुछ तो नया हुआ होगा, because it's sure that there have been fundamental shifts in the way we are living our lives, but anything new that is much more personal to you, or in general कुछ बताना हो.
The
after
new thing has to be
I'll
negative one or positive one. I mean, it can be anything, no?
हाँ
Okay, I'll go first then.
हाँ.
So, बिफोर पैंडेमिक द थिंग वाज कि मैं अपनी चीजों को लेके बहुत कॉन्फिडेंट थी। आई वाज लाइक कि ठीक है यार, टैलेंट है, कहीं ना कहीं तो पहुंच जाएंगे लाइफ में।
हाँ,
बट द पैंडेमिक मैं कुछ ज्यादा फ्री हो गई एक्चुअली। और उस
ओके।
बीच में ऑल दो सोशल मीडिया स्क्रोलिंग एंड ऑल दोस लिंक्डइन स्क्रोलिंग मेड मी वेरी इनसिक्योर अबाउट माय थिंग्स कि क्या
हाँ,
होगा क्या नहीं होगा। इफ आई लुक इट इन अ लाइक नेगेटिव वे तो हाँ, मेरा सेल्फ कॉन्फिडेंस थोड़ा डाउन हुआ है। बट इफ आई लुक इट इन अ पॉजिटिव वे तो आई एम ट्राइंग एवरी डे टू बिकम अ बेटर वर्जन मेरी तरफ से कि
हाँ,
ओके आई हैव टू बी मोर बेटर नेक्स्ट, मोर बेटर नेक्स्ट। So maybe that is the thing that changed me.
so a kind of, it has had a mental health का impact बहुत ज्यादा on you, right? And I'm sure बाकी लोगों के भी almost similar experiences होंगे.
हाँ, मैं बोलूँ?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
तो आई गेस मेरे अंदर तो बहुत ज़्यादा पेशेंस आ गया है, पहले तो बिल्कुल भी नहीं था। अब इस इतने 2
Okay.
साल फैमिली के साथ रह के थोड़ा पेशेंस आ चुका है। अब कोई कुछ करता है तो अच्छा ठीक है, तो छोड़ दो, जाने दो। अब ज़्यादा कुछ
हाँ,
बोलते नहीं है किसी को।
मुझे लगता है कि सारी जो बेटियां हैं हमारी अच्छी बहू बनने के लिए तो तैयार हो ही गई हैं। इतनी
बिल्कुल मैम, उसके लिए मुझे मेरी मम्मी ने बिल्कुल परफेक्टली ऐसा कर दिया है कि मैं 2-4 लोगों की फैमिली को बहुत आराम से खाना खिला सकती हूँ, सुबह उठकर उनके कपड़े धोना। मम्मी ने मुझे बिल्कुल परफेक्ट बहू बना दिया है।
वेरी गुड मॉर्निंग।
2-4 लोगों की
लेकिन
फैमिली
वही वही बात हम करना चाहते हैं कि बेटियों को भी मतलब कि जो प्रॉब्लम की बात हम करना या वायलेंस की हम बात करना चाहते थे यहाँ पे, तो संजना आपको नहीं लगता कि काफी हद तक तो चीजें रिजॉल्व हो चुकी है, लेकिन अभी भी वो चीजें बहुत हद तक समाज में कुछ तबके के ऊपर बहुत हैवी भी हैं। अभी भी हम उस केस इस प्रकार के केसेस को देखते हैं, चाहे वो निर्भया केस हो या दूसरे और केसेस होते हैं, तो कहीं ना कहीं तो वायलेंस है। लेकिन वो अब जो लोग बात कर रहे हैं ना, मुझे लगता है हमारे घरों से वो चीजें काफी हद तक दूर हो चुकी हैं कि हम लोगों को अपनी फैमिली में से कोई इक्का दुक्की फैमिली रेयर केस हो सकते हैं वहां पे, लेकिन मुझे नहीं लगता कि हमारी फैमिलीज में मर्दों की इतनी ताकत है कि वो हमें क्या कहूं कि खून भी कर सके।
मैम बिल्कुल, मतलब वो तो है ही, पर यही बात हो जाती है कि हम लोग बोल तो सकते हैं कि हाँ हम लोग प्रिविलेज हैं, बट शायद हम कितने ही लोग हैं, 30 या 40 लोग हैं इस कॉल पे, और आबादी हमारी 1.3 बिलियन की है, तो और कितनी औरतें क्या सफर कर रही है वो तो ऑब्वियसली हम लोग नहीं बोल सकते, बट हाँ
बिल्कुल
अपने
बिल्कुल,
पर्सनल एक्सपीरियंस से।
बहुत सी
बिल्कुल
हैं।
जी, पर
बहुत
पर्सनल एक्सपीरियंस से आई होप कि किसी ने वायलेंस ना फेस किया हो। आई मीन वी ऑल कैन जस्ट होप दैट, एंड इवन इफ यू हैव, तो आई मीन all our wishes with you, right? So okay, coming to the next question was that, since I asked what was new about your life, have you adjusted to the times we are living in? So for instance, किसी ने बोला कि social media scrolling बहुत ज़्यादा हो रहा है and mental health पे impact पड़ा है, किसी ने बोला है कि हम लोग को टेक्निकल गैजेट्स इन लाइफ एज सच से एक एडजस्टमेंट नहीं था, बट नाउ वी आर गेटिंग मोर एंड मोर यूज्ड टू इट। प्रॉब्ली अगर कोविड नहीं होता तो अभी हम लोग फिजिकल सेटिंग में होते, वी वुड हैव बीन एबल टू सी ईच अदर्स फेसेस, फिजिकली हम देख पाते एक दूसरे को। शायद अभी टी टाइम है तो समोसा और चाय मिल रहा होता स्नैक्स में, पर वो मतलब हो नहीं पा रहा है बिकॉज अभी हम लोग ऑनलाइन मोड पे आ गए। सो इंस्टेड ऑफ सेमिनार इट्स अ वेबिनार। तो while we are adjusting to this new life, right, there is a very important phrase that has been used in the pandemic, बहुत ज़्यादा, and I'd like you all to guess it. That I'm going to give you a hint also, and the hint is that it's the most important phrase used during the pandemic last year. Anyone who wants to talk about किस तरह से normal हो गया है सब कुछ ये,
That is the
anyone?
new normal.
Right,
New
the
normal.
new normal.
Yeah.
Right? So, what I am trying to point out is that while in the beginning it was not normal for us, now it has become completely normal and routinized. I'm pretty sure आप लोग को लग रहा होगा कि what I'm getting at ये सब तो already हमें पता है. But what I'm going to try to do next is make you all think in a certain direction, because today we are talking about gender-based violence, but particularly focus करते हुए violence against women. So now I come to a little bit of thought-provoking minutes for you, right? So I'm going to put up two phrases. Okay, first phrase आप लोग already guess कर लिए हो, the new normal, which is COVID-related phrase. The second phrase is something that I'll put out for all of you to guess, which is मतलब hint मैं दे रही हूँ, is that it is the most important feminist slogan during the 1960s and 70s. Any guesses?
Me too.
60s and 70s, the personal, something related to that. So, okay, I'll make it easy. The personal is political, right? So, ये एक बहुत ही बड़ा फेमिनिस्ट स्लोगन है जो अक्सर आप लोगों ने भी शायद सुना होगा जब फेमिनिज्म की बात करते हैं या जेंडर जस्टिस की बात करते हैं. पर्सनल इज पॉलिटिकल का मतलब यही होता है कि किस तरह से हमारी जो पर्सनल एक्टिविटीज और पर्सनल लाइव्स हैं वो किस तरह से इंक्रीजिंगली पॉलिटिकल होती हैं. जैसे कि हम लोग मतलब अक्सर पेरेंट्स हमें कहते हैं ना घर की बात घर में रहनी चाहिए, बट कभी कभी घर की बातें घर में रहने से वो अक्सर बैकफायर कर जाती हैं. सो फॉर इंस्टेंस समथिंग लाइक मैरिटल रेप हो गया या फिर हम लोग बस एक इसकी बात कर रहे थे, आई मीन वायलेंस अगेंस्ट वुमेन, हम डोमेस्टिक अब्यूज का ही यूजुअली बात करते हैं. सो व्हेन दैट इज कंप्लीटली प्राइवेट, शुड पीपल टॉक अबाउट इट और इज इट पॉलिटिकल? सो पॉलिटिकल इन दैट सेंस कि क्या ये बात पब्लिक में आनी चाहिए कि नहीं और पब्लिक में इस बारे पे चर्चा होनी चाहिए कि नहीं, क्या गवर्नमेंट को इस पे कुछ रूल्स एंड लॉज बनाने चाहिए कि नहीं. तो अभी तो हमारे पास है काफी, जैसे डोमेस्टिक एक्ट है, डोमेस्टिक वायलेंस के अगेंस्ट जो एक्ट्स हैं वो बहुत सारे हैं, मैरिटल रेप पे अभी डिस्कशन चल रहा है बहुत ज्यादा. तो ऑल दिस इज टू से दैट पर्सनल इज पॉलिटिकल. ठीक है, आई एम होपिंग सबको समझ में आ गया होगा. किसी को नहीं आया तो दे कैन जस्ट लाइक से. I'm putting two memes for you. Okay, the other one is not a meme, but the first one is definitely a meme. Now, what I want you guys to do is that आप लोग को मैंने जो ये दो phrases दिए हैं, मैं चाहती हूँ कि आप लोग इन दोनों को simultaneously सोचें. अब ये simultaneously सोचने के चक्कर में I want to give you an example और मैं चाहती हूँ कि आप लोग सब एक सिनेरियो को विजुअलाइज करें. ठीक है, तो द सिनेरियो दैट इज कि एक औरत है, एक महिला है जिसका नाम सुधा है. ठीक है, मैं मतलब रैंडमली कोई नाम ले रही हूँ, सुधा है एंड वो एक डे वेज लेबरर है. ठीक है, कंस्ट्रक्शन साइट पे काम करती है. लॉकडाउन हो गया है एंड अभी वो अपने घर पे बंद है क्योंकि लॉकडाउन में कंस्ट्रक्शन का सब काम बंद हो गया है. शी हैज लॉस्ट हर जॉब एंड शी इज कंप्लीटली इनसाइड द हाउस. ठीक है, सो she is inside a particular personal space जो उसका private space है. So the domestic space is often called personal space. I don't know यहाँ पे social science के students है कि नहीं, but if they are, I'm sure you guys must know the difference between the public and the private या फिर personal and the public space. And ये as a political science student हमारे लिए बहुत important हो जाता है. तो जो personal space है उसमें हम लोग सब घुस गए. तो सुधा भी हमारी तरह अपने घर में locked है क्योंकि अब लॉकडाउन महीनों महीनों भर चल रहा है. अल्कोहल बैन भी है एंड हम अज्यूम कर रहे हैं कि उनके हस्बैंड जो है एक सब्सटेंस अब्यूजर है एंड बिकॉज उनको अल्कोहलिक नेचर है उनका, ही इज टेकिंग आउट दैट वायलेंस ऑन सुधा एंड उनके बच्चे. एंड बच्चे में सपोज एक गर्ल चाइल्ड भी होती है एंड बिकॉज टुडे इज अ नेशनल गर्ल चाइल्ड, आई थिंक इट्स इंपॉर्टेंट टू विजुअलाइज दैट. So the amount of violence that she has to go through because she's locked up in a personal space, isn't it increasingly political? Because इस बारे में बात करना, इस बारे में गवर्नमेंट का एक रिस्पॉन्स होना बहुत ज्यादा जरूरी हो जाता है. इस सेंस में I want to talk about the COVID-19 pandemic, which is the new normal or which has now become the new normal, and a normal which is actually not that new, which is violence against women. But the proposition that I'm making, and please dhyan se sunna, is that while this normal or normalization of violence against women has been going on for centuries and decades, there is yet certain uniqueness or certain newness about it. And that is why it's important that we still talk about violence against women in a particular context of the new normal, which is the pandemic. Okay? Now, let's establish certain things before we, move on with the next slide. Is that अगर आप लोग ये सोच रहे हैं कि COVID-19 pandemic is the only pandemic where there is actually, violence against women, studies have indicated otherwise. Studies have shown that there is like a very, very intrinsic relationship between the pandemics that go on in the world, तो आपका bubonic plague हो गया या फिर Spanish flu जो 1918 में आया था वो plague हो गया, black deaths हो गए लंदन के, all of these pandemics are intrinsically linked to the violence that actually happens against women and children. So ये सिर्फ ये pandemic के लिए अलग नहीं है, but pandemics in general have a relationship with the kind of violence that goes on in the personal sphere, right? Now coming to certain facts. Now, because I am a researcher and a student, and I'm making a claim that there is a relationship between violence and the pandemic, I have to prove certain facts. So, the title, The Endemic of Gender Based Violence and the COVID-19 Pandemic, has been proved statistically, stating the obvious that violence against women has increased during the pandemic. So you guys can also read the slides. Just may clearly UN women ने United Nations women ने एक report conduct किया था, and they came up with the term the shadow pandemic, जो I think you all would have read through. The shadow pandemic may clearly in that report it has been said that 45% of women are exposed directly or indirectly to form of violence against women, and 45% is like almost 50% of women. These studies were conducted in 45 countries, so it's not even the whole globe, not all countries, but 45 countries में 45% women reported. And there was also reported that the calls to helpline, like जो domestic helpline होती हैं, उनके लिए भी 5-fold increase रहा है in some countries. And later we'll see that in India itself, we have witnessed this, huge spike in the number of calls that National Commission of Women and other helplines were, governmental agency की helplines जो है, were getting in because the violence had definitely increased. So you can definitely see that the violence that we are talking about is not just the physical violence, it's also the verbal abuse, it's also sexual harassment, it's denial of basic needs. So violence की जब हम बात कर रहे हैं वो सिर्फ physical नहीं है, वो ये सब चीजें भी हैं, and that includes even denial of basic communication. Now, when I'm saying denial of basic communication, I guess आप लोग को समझ में आ रहा होगा कि सुधा जो हमारी एक imaginary woman थी, उनकी क्या हालत हो रही होगी when her husband would have been beating her and she is not able to communicate with anyone outside because she's locked inside in her house. So now we see that how these two, the new normal, which is the COVID-19 pandemic, and the personal is political, is coming together. As you already said, na, कि आप लोग, violence पे बात कर चुके हो. This is where my presentation and the talk that we are having today is different because I'm trying to make you all think on very basic levels and just to understand कि किस तरह से there is newness even in the way we talk about violence against women. Now, the statistics clearly show that the 18 to 49 ka jo age gap hai, that is the particular age group where most of women have faced violence, which is people of your age have largely faced violence. But this does not mean that older women have not faced violence. There is also data that indicates, UN Women ka hi data hai, that also indicates that 60 plus जो age group के women है, even they have gone through some form of violence, but the target audience has been 18 to 49 का age group. Another very important thing, and I want you all to like note this point in your head because end of the presentation में काम आएगा, and that's my way of keeping a check कि आप लोग bored ना हो जाओ and hopefully शायद drop out ना करे off the call. But that COVID-19 has eroded women's feeling of safety, both inside and outside the house. So, this being said, now we have to understand that violence is not just, again, as I said earlier, it's not just the physical, but there are many stressors that induce violence. Induce, या फिर हम इसको इस तरह से बोल सकते हैं कि किस तरह से काफी सारे फैक्टर्स जो है वो एक साथ काम करते हैं डायरेक्टली या इनडायरेक्टली वायलेंस कंट्रीब्यूट करने के लिए अगेंस्ट वुमेन. तो एक हो गया आपका सोशियो इकोनॉमिक, एक हो गया आपका मेंटल एंड इमोशनल, एक हो गया आपका फिजिकल हेल्थ एंड वेलबींग, और चौथा हो गया आपका फूड इनसिक्योरिटी. आप लोग को ऑलरेडी पता होगा कि जब हम घर पे होते हैं, आई मीन मैं हमारा घर नहीं कह रही, बट मे बी कुछ घरों में ऐसा होता होगा कि सबसे पहले मेन ऑफ द हाउस को खाना दिया जाता है, एंड देन विमेन ऑफ द हाउस को दिया जाता है, एंड गर्ल चाइल्ड देन बिकम्स द लीस्ट द मोस्ट डिप्राइव्ड पर्सन एंड द लीस्ट फूड सिक्योर पर्सन, क्योंकि उनको हमेशा सबसे आखिरी में खाना दिया जाता है। तो फूड इनसिक्योरिटी भी कोविड के टाइम पे ड्रास्टिकली इंक्रीज हुई थी women की, and there are statistics that show that 41% of women reported deteriorating mental health. 46% were full-time caregivers. Full-time caregivers is जो काम नहीं कर रहे हैं, but they are doing unpaid care labor, जिसे मे बी आपकी मम्मियां होंगी जो काम पे नहीं जाती और पूरा पूरा टाइम आपका ख्याल रखती हैं. 46% of them reported that their mental and emotional health was being undermined, and 45% of employed women. तो आप देख रहे हैं कि there's not much difference between women being employed and not employed. दोनों equally उतना ही emotional and mental health deterioration report की हैं. Of course, employed women have a double burden. 39% of students of your age, have also reported deteriorating mental health. Now, I'm making you all understand that this is also a form of violence, and हम violence को हमेशा physical sense में जो assume करते हैं, we have to break this stereotype. Now, coming on to children, since it's National Girl Child Day, definitely children की बात करना बहुत important हो जाता है. Now, since we've already discussed that women of 18 to 49 and women are under severe stress, and women are often considered to be the bearers of the family and the rearers of the family as well. So since they are the child rearers, उनका mental health deteriorate होना obviously children को भी affect करता है. More than that, बच्चे भी अब ऑनलाइन स्पेसेस में शिफ्ट हो रहे हैं, विच इज दैट उनके क्लासेस ऑनलाइन हो रहे हैं. स्टार्टिंग ऑफ द पैंडेमिक में तो क्लासेस भी ऑनलाइन नहीं हो रहे, तो पूरा पूरा दिन बच्चे घर पे बैठे रहते थे. दे वर नॉट प्लेइंग आउटसाइड, दे वर जस्ट सिटिंग इनडोर्स. सो उसके दौरान पेरेंट्स को भी जो स्ट्रेस हो रहा है और चिल्ड्रन को भी जो स्ट्रेस फील हो रहा था बिकॉज ऑफ दिस कंप्लीट आइसोलेशन, there was definitely a wearing down of both physical as well as mental well-being. Statistics say that 1 in 4 parents reported worsening mental health condition in their children, and 1 in 7 parents reported behavioral changes in their children. Now, coming to the scenario in India, which concerns us the most, the National Commission of Women का जो data है, जो data collection हुआ था, it records 2.5 times increase in domestic violence cases just between February and May of 2020, right? This is just a matter of few months, and 2.5 times ka increase. Indian women filed more domestic violence cases in the first 4 phases of lockdown than ever in a decade. 86% of women who experienced domestic violence did not seek help. Now, this is another very important point that needs to be understood. कि cases में spike हो रहा है, लेकिन 86% of women है जो domestic violence के लिए help seek नहीं कर रहे हैं. यहाँ पे the phrases that we were discussing, the new normal and the personal is political, becomes extremely important. कि किस तरह से violence अंडर रिपोर्ट हो रहा था बिकॉज घर की बात घर में रहनी चाहिए, या फिर आपके इन लॉज थे, मतलब वुमेन के इन लॉज थे या पेरेंट्स थे हु वर नॉट लेटिंग वुमेन स्पीक, एंड दे फेल्ट कंपेल्ड टू नॉट रिपोर्ट बिकॉज फिर घर पे ही रहना है तो बात आगे कैसी बढ़ाई जाए. सो this being said, other forms of gender-based violence were also going on along with, not just rape and domestic abuse, but also forced child marriages. And there are statistics that prove that child marriages had increased a lot. I think kuch din pehle hi newspaper mein bhi aaya tha that child marriages have increased a lot over the past 2 years. Then cyber violence. Is someone saying something? Should I continue?
Yes, ma'am, you can.
Oh, okay. Cool. Yeah. So, हाँ कहाँ पे थे हम लोग? हाँ, तो यंग गर्ल्स में ट्रैफिकिंग जो है वो भी हो रहा था. सो साइबर वायलेंस की हम बात करते हैं. समवन just said that I was scrolling through social media. I'm pretty sure while you were scrolling through social media, there would have been a lot of women who, or maybe you even, who would have experienced some kind of trauma because of something random was so going on ki there was a certain possibility of cyber violence that was going on. And sexual trafficking of young women, though it drastically increased globally as well as in India. It's a paradox that while women were losing job, because there is statistics, women were losing job, girls were undernourished, they were not being given proper food insecurity bahut zyada tha. All of that was happening, and the biggest industry that was gaining a lot of boom was the trafficking industry. So the human trafficking industry gained a boom during the COVID-19 pandemic, while women were suffering to death. So you can understand the magnitude of which violence against women has continued in this new normal that we are calling. Now I'm putting up two fun facts. It's not fun, but just fun fact. Okay. So Delhi recorded the highest number of domestic violence cases. So Delhi hai, metropolitan city hai, urban space hai, and it's definitely the national capital. And that records the highest number of domestic violence cases. This is something to think about because we often feel कि violence against women generally गांव में होता है या ये stereotypes होते हैं, but through this particular statistic, this stereotype also gets busted. The other stereotype is that state of Kerala had the best public health infrastructure, and I think globally उनको appreciate किया गया था. Even the chair of UNDP and UN were extremely praising the Kerala government for its health services. But the question that we need to ask is that while they were able to save women from viruses, were they able to save women from abuse and violence? Because Kerala also reported high number of domestic violence cases. But just to say that despite having high literacy rate, high female literacy rate, despite being one of the best developed states in India, violence against women has not subsided. So even in COVID time, there was nothing new about the way violence was taking place in these places. Now, coming to certain dilemmas. Now, this is the most interesting section of the whole presentation, and I'm sorry if you guys are getting bored. I'll just go and see your faces, aap logo ke. I hope you guys are not getting bored, huh?
No, no.
Just asking, right? Because abhi jo hai, ye thoda brain teaser hai, so I want you all to be thinking, and if there is any doubt, just like share and mujhe stop karna. I don't mind being stopped here. Okay, so higher contraction to virus. Now, this is a question that I'd like you all to ask. Ask yourselves, when you were ill, maybe a lot of you would have contracted COVID yourself. Who was taking care of you primarily? Mummy, right? Mummy या दीदी, यही लोग केयर कर रहे थे. तो इसका क्या मतलब है? इसका मतलब यही है कि the woman of the house is more susceptible to contracting COVID than men, right? And there's no I have no hidden agenda against men. Please, I'm not a man hating feminist, but I think it's only practical. और हम जब assume करते हैं तो हमें समझ में आता है कि mummies and I'm so sorry, that's my dog. So it's the females of the house who generally have the burden of taking care of their children, of the sick people. So the double burden of unpaid labor and care. Now I don't know यहाँ पे economics and social science के students हैं नहीं, but I'm not going to put those words. So unpaid labor and care, basically it's just that how किस तरह से women are working and they are not being paid. So for instance आपके घर में maid आती है and she is taking care of you. You're going to pay her, right? But आप अपनी मम्मी को तो पे नहीं करते हो. आप उनको उनकी ड्यूटी समझ के वो आपके लिए काम करती हैं. But that's actually unpaid labor. And therefore, women there are more at a risk of contracting the virus than anybody else. More than that, 17% of women, statistics has clearly shown that 17% of, there is a gap of 17% between men and women getting vaccinated, which is to say that women are have lesser probability of getting vaccinated than men. क्योंकि अक्सर ऐसा होता है कि इंटरनेट का एक्सेस नहीं होता है women को, and therefore They have to rely on the male counterparts for that. So I'm asking you to understand violence against women not in isolation, but in all of these aspects, in these different dimensions. Then coming on to the public healthcare system. The second wave, we all saw how crashing our public healthcare system was. And crashing, I mean like literally crashing. Oxygen nahi hai, beds nahi hai. We were all, calling someone or the other. So healthcare services itself were crumbling. But at this point, the people who were survivors of domestic abuse, physical hurt, उनको खुद को access to healthcare नहीं था, right? A lot of ASHA workers and जो local agencies, feminist organizations work कर रही हैं, they all have posed, serious concern of how they were calling ambulances. So maternal health care was a big issue at that time because hospitals में, uh, kids, I mean, they could not give birth in hospitals क्योंकि hospitals पूरी तरीके से filled थे. Plus, more than that, COVID test कराना होता था before birthing ताकि child को COVID contract ना हो, उसका डर रहता था. So home births became a very big, you know, a very big phenomenon there. But home births भी यही हो रहा था कि ambulances नहीं थे. So the risk of, the life of woman itself was at risk. So child भी था and women were also going through this massive risk that was there. The second point that you have to understand is the frontline workers. Now, nurses, maximum nurses are women, and they were the ones who were primarily taking up the role of healthcare. While we see that nurses form, the crux of the staff, managerial positions पे या decision making positions पे generally men होते हैं. जिसके कारण अगर हम देखेंगे कि women nurses and women healthcare staff were more at risk of contracting the virus and public health system than men. Then coming to social relief programs being distributed disproportionately. UN Women का report कहता है कि most of the governments that had certain schemes for the poor people, for poor women at that time, most of the women could not afford that and could not access that particular social relief program. And this has been the case in India as well, right? The third important dilemma that you need to think is the loss of financial independence for women. So our imaginary example, Sudha, जिनका कंस्ट्रक्शन जो एक कंस्ट्रक्शन वर्कर थी एंड जिनका जो जॉब था वो उनसे छीन लिया गया था बिकॉज लॉकडाउन आ गया था and therefore she lost the financial independence. So the little money that she was earning is also gone. Now, because of loss of financial independence, what also happened was that women were number one, 7% of now this is a statistic, and I'm sorry my statistics itna bol rahi, but I need to quote because being a researcher and a student you need to support your claims. So 7% of men lost their jobs. Guess how many percentage of women would have lost their jobs? Any guesses? Random numbers, come on.
I would say more than 50%.
Okay, anybody else?
64.
74.
70%.
क्या मेरा मतलब प्रेजेंटेशन इतना डिप्रेसिंग है कि इतना मतलब फाइनेंशियल इंडिपेंडेंस या जॉब लॉस का आप लोग को लग रहा है?
I think
It's
somewhere
definitely
like
less.
at least
No,
double.
actually, women.
30s में या
30,
20s
33.
में.
14, 15 around. I think 14,
Yeah,
15.
47%. So 47% women lost their job, and I'm pretty sure that's also underreported. So 47 because informal sector का generally हम लोग count नहीं करते हैं. So obviously lay off करने के लिए सबसे पहले women को ही पकड़ा जाता है. So they are, at a higher risk of losing their job than men. So that was also a form of violence, an economic form of violence that was going on against women. The fourth dilemma is the intersectional angle. Now we all know intersectionality ki hum bahut baat karte hain and stuff, and it's an important methodological tool while talking about gender justice, especially while talking about gender-based violence. So when we talk about intersectional angle, I'm also looking at how caste has a very important role to play in Indian society. So while the Dalits and the lower caste women were at the maximum receiving end of violence, because बहुत सारी reports आई थी where upper caste men were abusing Dalit women, or let us say, a lot of them, refuse to eat food made by Dalit women in quarantine centers. So I think there are like Hindu and Indian Express, and all of them had these reports coming up. So caste division definitely got heightened up during the pandemic itself. Apart from that, queer communities की अगर हम बात करें, there is a very interesting paper in EPW which talks about how the pandemic kind of reduce the queer spaces that were there. So when we talk about personal spaces, queer spaces are the spaces jahan pe, the queer people can like express themselves, or the trans people can express themselves. But often Indian families have, heteronormative conventions, and वो लोग इतने welcoming नहीं होते हैं to how, the lifestyle that queer and trans people wish to have. उस चक्कर में जो उनका पर्सनल स्पेस होता है उसमें क्वियर स्पेसेस भी डेफिनेटली डिक्लाइन हो जाती हैं, एंड दे फेस much more of violence than a cisgender woman would. So, for instance, there was a report recently that said that a lot of trans women and trans men were having a lot of problem finding, simply housing, shelter, which comes under Article 21 of Right to Life, was also being denied to them because landlords were abusing them, या उन लोग को क्योंकि सोसाइटी बहुत डिस्टिंक्ट तरीके से देखती है, उन लोग के अगेंस्ट इस प्रकार का भी एक वायलेंस क्रिएट हो रहा था. Then coming on to sexual exploitation. Now, as I already mentioned, that trafficking had increased in India and also globally. Sexual exploitation is also a form of violence that is very very tangible in women across the country, and इसमें child labor भी बहुत ज़्यादा हद तक आता है. Then coming on to the sixth and the most important dilemma, and I think I'll leave you with this thought. I'm not ending the seminar, don't worry. इतनी जल्दी नहीं करूंगी, but just posing another dilemma for you all to think, that while there is clearly, as the all of presentation has said, that there are different forms of violence that are going on, socio-economic, socio-biological factors hai, physical factors hai, mental hai, emotional hai, economic hai, all of these are there, and there are rising cases of violence against women. But as we noted before, 86% of them did not want to seek help, or that there was underreporting of cases going on. So एक जगह पे हम देख रहे हैं that there is a spike in cases, and then दूसरी जगह पे there is also underreporting that's going on. So what do you think is actually happening? How much are we really aware of the violence that is going on around us? Do we have a clear picture of how deep the violence and how pervasive this violence against women and also gender-based violence in general is, towards people in our community? So that's something that I leave you thinking. If anyone has any input, please feel free to speak now, or we can take it up at the end. JCB. All right, I'm considering nahi hai, so I'll go to the next slide. Now, rethinking some COVID-19 phrases. Now, here I need some, I'll do a little bit of snapping because हो सकता है tea time हो और चाय ना मिल रहा हो तो सबको थोड़ा नींद आ रहा हो. So let me just feel free to get your teacups. Again, I'm saying please, huh? So we are going to uncover the gendered paradoxes in the very, very interesting COVID-19 phrases that were used. Now, how many of you used this filter? Come on, be honest. How many of you use this filter? Do people recognize what filter is this, or कौन से app में था ये?
Where is Shruti? Shruti Taneja? Our influencer.
Okay. It's on Instagram.
Instagram, right? So this is an Instagram filter, and I'm hoping बहुत लोगों ने use किया होगा ये, ठीक है? मैंने भी use किया है. I am also guilty of using it. So stay home से associated एक बहुत popular COVID-19 phrase है. Does anyone want to give a guess? Come on यार, इतनी जल्दी मत भूलो, अभी भी pandemic चल रहा है. हाँ जी. Stay home, stay safe. Right? Now, when we are talking about stay home, stay safe, is there a gendered paradox here? So, stay home is obviously to protect you from the pandemic and the virus that's going on, the new normal, which is for you to stay under lockdown, there is also an issue of safety. तो पर्सनल इस पॉलिटिकल का जो हमने पूरा शुरू से स्टार्ट किया था, वो यहाँ पे आता है अब क्वेश्चन, आर वुमेन रियली सेफ इन देयर ओन होम्स दैट वी सो कन्वीनियंटली से स्टे होम, स्टे सेफ? So the question of safety is a very big paradox that's there in this extremely popular Instagram filter जो मैंने भी use किया है and sure सबने use किया होगा. That's the normalization of violence that I'm talking about. कि even in our regular language that we speak, उसमें भी किस तरह से violence जो है वो इतना implicit है कि हमें पता भी नहीं चलता है. Now coming to this, any guesses what this you know picture associates to a phrase?
Social distancing.
Yes, social distancing. Very quick. So, social distancing was also, a phrase that was used. Later, World Health Organization dropped it, and uski jagah pe we started using physical distancing. Now, in social distancing, it's extremely important to understand that the word social distancing has a very big notion of hygiene, purity, and pollution involved in it. Okay, I'm going to read out something, and please, ispe like aram se, we'll take time and we'll try to think through this particular phrase. Yeah. So the ill-conceived norm of social distancing has Brahminical patriarchal undertones, which gained prominence during the lockdown and was regularly used by all the governments, is another example of an enduring legacy of COVID-19 lockdown restriction. Smita Patil, okay, I'm going to read out. She wrote something in 2021 in one of her EPW papers. EPW is Economic and Political Weekly. Usme she wrote that the category of social distancing needs to be revisited because it reminds us of a stigma and oppressive memory related to caste, trauma, and gender stereotypes. So, for instance, let me ask a very basic question. When you're menstruating, जब आपके periods चल रहे होते हैं, how many of your parents or कोई भी आपके घर में बड़ा होगा would be like, दूर रहो, मंदिर के पास मत आओ, right? ये मत करो, distance maintain करो, मुझे मत छुओ, है ना? ऐसा है ना? Untouchability का concept है इंडिया में. That is very much implicit in the way we use the term social distancing. Certain lower castes were not allowed to access a lot of resources, even basic resources as water, just because they were considered to be polluted. And at the same time, people who were going through COVID-19, जो contract करते थे virus, हम उनको भी तो ऐसे ही treat करते थे, right? We were so scared of going even near to them. कोई बोल दे गलती, मतलब इतने मीम्स आए थे ड्यूरिंग दिस पैंडेमिक कि कोई इरिटेट कर रहा हो तो छींक के आ जाओ, या किसी के मतलब एक्स के साथ कोई रिवेंज लेना हो तो खांसी करके आ जाओ उसके घर में अगर कोविड-19 है तो मतलब दिस वाज लाइक इट वाज सच अ बिग ट्रॉमा, राइट? कि मतलब we have to go through, and this was clearly indicating that there is a certain implicit form of violence that was there, and this violence is related to caste, it's related to the gender stereotypes that were already present in our society. Now, Goldie George in 2020 wrote another paper, and he wrote that in a caste society like India, the notion of social distancing provides the ground for the casteist percept of distancing one from each other based on birth, and it can reinvent and re-legitimize an oppressive form of isolation and segregation as in a classical caste society. Now, being a political science student, I thought that this was a good quote, but I don't know how many of you really understood it. But I hope that, this point that I was making on how social distancing is actually itself a form of violence, and therefore it's only good that the WHO dropped the term and used the term physical distancing to ask people to maintain a distance. So I'm guessing that both of these interesting phrases जो आप लोग बहुत normally use करते थे, now that you will be using, you'll be much more aware of the implicit violence that both of these terms have, and the gendered connotations that are there in these phrases. Now, finally, concluding remarks. So, rapid gender assessment tests were conducted by UN Women, and the results that came out of it were used in their report on the shadow pandemic, which helped to identify factors which conclusively have determined that there is a parallel pandemic going on, which is the violence against women that was going on specifically during the times of COVID. Now, UN Women and UNDP together formed, like a global gender response tracker to monitor government's response to the pandemic in a more gender sensitive way. So we talked about personal is political, right? तो उसी तरह से कोविड 19 के दौरान जो ये पर्सनली स्पेसेस में जो वायलेंस हो रहा था उसका किस तरफ से गवर्नमेंट इज रिस्पॉन्डिंग टू इट, क्योंकि द रिस्पॉन्स इज एक्सट्रीमली इंपॉर्टेंट, उसको किस तरह से हाउ सक्सेसफुल द गवर्नमेंट्स वर इन डूइंग दैट. This particular tracker, the global gender response tracker, was doing that. Now, gender based violence was one of the most neglected outcomes of the pandemic, and Oxfam report, The Ignored Pandemic, suggests that access to effective and quality services that enabled women to seek help was missing, and therefore that was needed. So, more funding to women organizations, and therefore it's also important to connect local organizations to organize remedial help. So that's one solution that this particular Oxfam report was giving. All right. I'm so sorry. Okay. And then the most important concluding remark that I would want you all to kind of think about is that, and I repeatedly said that throughout my presentation, that violence cannot, or violence against women, let me just emphasize that, cannot and should not be seen in isolation. Several factors might intricately knit together to result in violence against women. And the last point is that when we talk about lockdown, there was a lot of talk about that this particular thing is an essential service, that particular thing is an essential service. But at the end of the day, I think the need of the hour is to understand that to counter domestic violence, that itself should be considered as an essential service. That responding to domestic violence needs to be considered that way. So that's my presentation, and I hope that it was interesting and it provided, some insights. I'll stop presenting now. So anyone has any questions or anything to add? Please don't give me feedback. अच्छा था ये था वो था मतलब मुझे वो नहीं चाहिए. But anything that you think is important for us to discuss here. We all are women. I think most of us, the participants. So any input.
Guys,
May I speak? Okay, audible?
Yes, Afreen, you are audible. Go ahead.
Am I audible?
Yes, Afreen.
Okay. So I think this crimes are. Uh, so I think the crime against women happened because of the gender discrimination, and so I would like to share topic gender discrimination. Like, let me give you a glimpse of my own life when I used to go out somewhere. Thousands of questions used to be there. Why are you going? With whom you are going? Or when you will come back? Sometimes they even used to say, take your brother with yourself. So, like at that moment of time, I feel like, don't I have my hands or brain to protect myself? So, I think this gender discrimination resides in families. हम जितना फैमिली के डीप में जाएंगे हमें पता चलेगा कि हमें बचपन से ही सब सिखाया जाता है. लाइक वी यूज्ड टू टीच आवर बॉयज कि डोंट क्राई बिकॉज बॉयज डोंट क्राई. सो आई फील लाइक व्हाई शुड दैट you should teach your sons ki make like never make a girl cry. girl cry. Like if I think if when the men will understand how to treat a woman equally, then there will be no evils out there to outrage her modesty. So and like when we like people used to always recite story when people used to say storytelling, so they feel like am I audible now? So people used to say storytelling when they always represent boys as warriors and girls as like innocent, cute, lovely. So when I used to hear these kind of storytelling all the time, I feel like just cut the crap because girls are not always born to be delicate princesses. They can be the warriors also. Hello, I thought I'm not audible.
No, 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 you're definitely
No,
audible.
you're audible.
Am I not audible?
No, no, you're audible. You're
Afreen,
audible.
go ahead.
You are audible.
I think there is some network issue.
No, like I just finished myself. I just rest my
Okay,
case here.
African,
Like
thank
I thought I was not audible.
you. Okay, thank you. Anybody else? एक मेरा पर्सनल क्वेश्चन है
Can I say
कि
something? Yes, yes, Manati,
पहले
go ahead.
इतना सब कुछ मतलब इतनी सारी गवर्नमेंट इतना कर रहा है, हेल्पलाइन नंबर्स आ रहे हैं, इतनी एप्स आ रही हैं, इतने सोशल हम लोग इतने इवेंट्स करा रहे हैं, सब कुछ हो रहा है, उसके बाद भी वायलेंस कम होता हुआ दिखाई नहीं दे रहा है. तो आपको क्या लगता है कि कितना टाइम लगेगा लोगों को समझने में और इस वायलेंस को कम होने में, या क्या और स्टेप्स हैं जो हम गवर्नमेंट ऐसे ले सकती है कि ये वायलेंस कम हो जाए?
आई थिंक आपके क्वेश्चन का आंसर तो आफरीन ने कर दिया था बहुत पहले. मे बी लाइक शी हैड प्रिडिक्शंस कि you're going to ask this question or not. But yeah, it begins in the family, right? So family, see, I am no expert, ठीक है, and मैं अपने आप को expert समझ भी नहीं रही हूँ. I am also a student learning like you all only. And as much as I've read and understood, I think families become the place जहाँ पे we have to start rebelling. I don't know how many of you are scandalized just listening to this word rebelling. मेरे parents तो बहुत scandalized हो जाते हैं. तो rebellion needs to come, right? And it has to come from home. And rebellion is not मैं घर छोड़ के भाग जाऊंगी. That's not what it is. It just means that you have to initiate a dialogue, right? You have to start talking to your parents and make them understand a lot of things. And I know they don't understand. That's definitely there. But because bahar bhi society aisi hi hai, if you say I'm going to walk out at 11 in the night, of course you're going to be under threat. So it's not like rebellion is not always just doing what I want to do, but it's also being smart. And as girls we need to be smart. There is a reason why we also carry pepper spray, right? So violence is not going to end, and that's the reason why I said endemic, right? But there is a thought there that I've put. There is a certain hope that I've put there, that it can also be a pandemic. Like, in the sense, endemic is something that doesn't end at all, right? And pandemic is something which kind of phases out, right? So violence phases out to become an endemic, but it can be fought. And how it can be fought is when we are more immune to violence. And by immune, I don't mean get normalized to violence, rather fight that violence with whatever means you have right now. So like financial independence is one of the means by which you can actually fight violence. Being more aware of your rights is a big this one. So just when I said personal is political, right? That's what it means. You have to understand that your personal struggles are extremely political in nature. So anyone from political science background here? Say no one?
Yes.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah. So that's what, right? This is what is personal is political. So I hope ki Manya, your question was answered. But that's what I'm going to say. So anybody else? That was interesting.
Yes, I want to tell you. Uh, ये मानने दी की चीज से थोड़ा लेट हो गया है कि कब खत्म होगा वाली चीज एंड एज यू सेड कि यू हैव टू रेबेल समटाइम्स एट होम आई एम रियली सॉरी बट आई समवॉट डिसएग्री विद यू उस पार्ट पे बिकॉज इट्स नॉट ऑलवेज कि हमारे पेरेंट्स हर बात पे गलत हो समटाइम्स दे आर राइट आई मीन इफ आई लुक आई एम जस्ट टॉकिंग अबाउट माई पर्सपेक्टिव इज नॉट मैं सबके पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से नहीं बोल रही इट इज जस्ट कि मेरे घर पे मेरे भाई को नल्ला मानते हैं लाइक he's of no use. Okay, my parents love me, appreciate me more than like me and my sister. उसको बहुत ज़्यादा मानता है rather than my brother. But it is the this is the thing the place from where I belong from. I am from Bihar. यहाँ पर gender discrimination is like गली गली में चलती हुई चीज है बहुत कॉमन है भाई तो और यहाँ पर बहुत ज़्यादा थ्रेट भी है गर्ल्स को ऑनेस्टली सो इफ माई लाइक इफ आई एम गोइंग आउट समटाइम्स एंड माई पेरेंट्स सेज कि भाई के साथ चले जाओ तो मैं उनको उस वे में गलत नहीं मानती बिकॉज एक्चुअली मतलब होता है थ्रेट होता है तो उस बात पे मैं अपने पेरेंट्स को गलत नहीं मानती बट बात ये है कि अगर मैं बाहर जाती हूँ तो मेरे पेरेंट्स मेरे को छोड़ देते हैं ओके इट्स योर लाइफ गो वट डू वट एवर यू वॉन्ट टू but it is not always about your family but it is sometimes about the society you are in या जिस आजू बाजू में तुम हो वो भी बहुत अफेक्ट करती है तुम्हारे ये कोई भी एक मैं वो क्या बोलूँ सोशल माइंडसेट को मे बी लाइक आई जस्ट टेल यू मेरे घर के पीछे एक लड़की रहती है उसके पापा की लाइक दे वेर ऑलरेडी पुअर और इस पैंडेमिक में उसके पापा की जॉब चली गई एंड देवर फोर सिस्टर्स सो उसके पापा ने क्या किया दो जन की शादी करा दी एंड देवर मेयर 16 and 13 years old मेयर 16 and 13 एंड जो 16 वाली थी वो जब 17 years की हुई शी केम बैक होम विद अ चाइल्ड इन हर हैंड and I was shocked. I was traumatized at that point. Ki, oh my god, what is this thing going on? And the two sisters, the 14 and 13-year old sisters, were fighting for their husbands. कि मेरे पति के पास ज्यादा पैसा है तुम्हारे पति का ज्यादा अच्छा ही है एंड आई वाज लाइक वेयर इज दिस थिंग गोइंग मतलब भाई ये ऐसे सोसाइटीज से बिलोंग कर रहे हैं एंड उनके लिए वो चीज नॉर्मल थी बट मेरे लिए वो चीज बहुत ट्रॉमेटाइजिंग थी ऑनेस्टली that's what I just want to say. It's sometimes not always about family. मेरे पापा भी उसी गली में रहते हैं वो लोग भी उसी जगह पे रहते हैं but it is sometimes about the society you live in.
Right, I completely agree with you. And like मैंने बोला था ना that we sometimes walk with pepper spray. There is a reason why we walk with that, right? So definitely, it's not just हम लोग किसी भी चीज को isolate करके नहीं देख सकते. And that's why I was like so keen on making you all understand कि you should not look at violence as in an isolated form. So your experience can be very different from a person living next door. जैसे Shruti rightly said that उसकी neighbors ये literally child marriage हुआ है तो you've kind of experienced what violence against women looks like and the fun part okay not a fun part I have to stop doing that the part is that women don't even realize that like आप जो कह रहे हो 16 years and 13 years they're fighting whose husband is richer and you kind of then think where are we heading as a society that's where I think women become important. Even दो लोग भी हैं अगर 100 की भीड़ में कुछ कह रहे हैं तो कोई तो सुनेगा ना बोलना तो पड़ेगा so that's what it is so you should have that much courage to speak up is ma'am still there cool yeah मैं भड़काने नहीं आई हूँ किसी को प्लीज ऐसे मत समझना you guys are free to have your own opinions
No,
so yeah
I think sometimes even women don't have the courage to fight for their rights. Like being a woman sometimes can be an excuse for them. इससे ना कुछ टाइम पहले जैसे एक सोशल मीडिया पे एक रैप बहुत फेमस था कि फेमिनिज्म ने ये भी सिखाया कि छोरियों को बेचारियों छोरियों ने ही बनाया so like sometimes for them being a woman is an excuse these women I would like to say कि you don't need to be silent with different excuses you need to be independent with your own
right Right. And I mean, see, when I was talking that Sudha ka example jo main de rahi thi, there was a reason why I said ki I assumed that the person who was perpetrating violence was a man. It's not necessary it'll always be a man. It can also be a woman, right? Saas bahu ki sazish jo kehte rehte hain, that's always there, right? So yes, it's true. Women also can be like forebearers of patriarchy. पर वही बात आती है and then also see while we are talking about this it's very important to understand that you cannot also put your judgment over a woman, right? तुम्हें जो सही लगता है and you can fight, you have your resources, right? Today maybe Shruti can say, hey, no father, I don't want to marry, I want to pursue my studies. Maybe the other two girls did not have the chance to say that. So कभी कभी ये भी एक हो जाता है that हम लोग अपनी पोजीशन से जब दूसरों को देखते हैं तो एक जजमेंट का काफी डर रहता है. तो फेमिनिज्म हैज टू बी सेंसिटिव अबाउट दैट एज वेल. एंड इट्स सैड कि हमारे कॉलेज स्पेसेस में देयर इज इतना एक्टिव फेमिनिस्ट सर्कल्स नहीं है दैट वी ऑल कैन स्पीक टू एंड स्टफ. But I hope कि यहाँ पे at least you're getting a chance to vent out whatever it is because it's important. It's important. It matters. Your voice matters. That's what I want to say. So anybody else, just go ahead. मुझे टाइम का कोई दिक्कत नहीं है. आप
Yeah,
लोग
can I
अपना बताना ठीक है कब खत्म करना है.
can I just
Agreeing to you.
ask?
Okay, Ice, go on, Ice. Sorry.
Okay, so I'll just go at first. I just wanted to ask, जैसे you also said that there are 86% of women who didn't report the cases that they were facing something, and as Afreen also just mentioned कि वो लोग ये सोच लेते हैं क्योंकि उन्हें बचपन से बताया जाता है कि आप लड़की हो इतना तो होता ही है, लाइक अगर आपका हस्बैंड आपको एक थप्पड़ मार रहा है तो वो तो चलता ही है, एक थप्पड़ तो कुछ नहीं होता, हमने तो बहुत सहा, लाइक उनको एक्चुअली बचपन से आई हैव सीन कि लाइक जैसे मेरे घर में जो दीदी आती हैं, आई हैव सीन कि वो ऐसी बातें ही करती हैं कि एक थप्पड़ में क्या होता है. सो आई ट्राई टू इवन मेक देम अंडरस्टैंड, बट आई एक्चुअली वांट टू आस्क कि हम उन्हें कैसे ये समझा सकते हैं कि एक थप्पड़ बहुत कम नहीं होता, एंड एक थप्पड़ क्या, लाइक कुछ वर्बल अब्यूज भी बहुत कम नहीं होता ना, आपको उसका स्टैंड लेना ही चाहिए. एंड अपनी डॉटर को भी ये सिखाना चाहिए कि हाँ उसका स्टैंड लो, रादर देन कि आप चुपचाप बैठ जाओ, कुछ नहीं होता.
पता है बेस्ट टेक्निक इज टू वॉच थप्पड़ मूवी टुगेदर.
I was about to say that.
Because I'll tell you
I was
what.
just about to say that.
Because sometimes it's so hard as women to just talk about these things because तुम्हें लगता है कि यार ये औरत है ये क्यों नहीं समझ रही है, right? And see that's there definitely, but वही है point is that when underreporting of cases is going on, right? Now this survey was conducted by NCW and the Hindu, the newspaper. And when I read that fact, I was like 86%. I mean 45% तो कह रही है कि हमें experience हुआ है domestic abuse, and 86% are saying that we don't want to report it. So then you have to understand that it's not just that they've been normalized to violence, but also that they don't have the conditions to report violence, right? How many of you know that if you're below the age of 18, you can actually report your parents if you're facing violence? किसको POSCO laws पता है? Do you really think even like a person who's employed, none of us would know? मुझे खुद नहीं पता भाई कि domestic violence और इस abuse के क्या clauses हैं करके. So it's not just that they don't want to report, but it's also that they don't have the knowledge. They don't have enough resources to report. A woman who has just lost her job and is completely reliant on the man for her survival, do you really think she would want to report her husband? She wouldn't. Where will she go? I mean, separation laws are also so gendered, and the reason is that you know alimony बोलते हैं ना उसे, after divorce जो देना होता है alimony जो होता है. I mean till you're divorced you cannot avail that. So where does she go then? वो जो period है where who will take care of her children? She'll have to drop them in an orphanage, and a mother not caring about her children will again be a societal stigma कि कैसी माँ है बच्चों को छोड़ा है. So I mean, I don't want to sound very preachy, but what I'm trying to tell you is that sometimes we have our own judgments and biases, and we shouldn't be having that. Because agar wo hota hai, then we won't be able to take a clear picture of what's happening in the society, right? So, anyone else?
I
I would
was
like
saying
to ask.
earlier also कि I agreeing to your and कि एक endemic type है, आपसे खत्म नहीं कर सकते. I really don't think it's about home or people. I think it's all about thinking. मतलब
मेरे father, he is a very successful man, he's a very successful he's a very good person, but at the same time 4-5 days back मैं मुझे एक आर्टिकल लिखना था कि वर्क स्पेस पे जेंडर इक्वालिटी के ऊपर, तो आई आस्क्ड फॉर हिज थॉट्स, तो ही वाज लाइक कि हम उनको एक हद तक इक्वलिटी दे रहे हैं, उससे ज्यादा हम नहीं दे सकते, इवन दो उनके सीनियर्स उनकी उनकी वो ही इज एन ए फोर्स, उनकी जो सीनियर्स हैं वो जो इमीडिएट सीनियर हैं वो खुद एक ऑफिसर लेडी हैं, एंड शी इज वेरी गुड, एंड ही इज आल्सो वेरी गुड विद हर, बट एट द सेम टाइम ही इज लाइक कि हम उनको एक लेवल तक इक्वलिटी दे रहे हैं, सब वो हर चीज पे इक्वलिटी नहीं मांग सकती, वो इतने इक्वल नहीं हो सकते हम उनके साथ, वी कांट बी लाइक ऑलवेज हाँ सब कुछ इक्वली है, सब कुछ सब कुछ सेम ही होना चाहिए, हम वो नहीं बोल सकते, तो लड़कियों को एक जगह सब कुछ इक्वल चाहिए होता है, सेकंड जगह उनको रिजर्व चीज चाहिए होती है, वो चाहिए होता है, कोटा चाहिए होते हैं, तो आई एम जस्ट पुटिंग माई थॉट राइट नाउ कि आई थिंक इट्स, मतलब मैं उससे झगड़ा करने से जाती तो मैंने उस चीज मतलब काफी बार होता है कि मैं बहुत बार झगड़ा कर लेती हूँ उनसे, बहुत बार तक मैं इग्नोर कर देती हूँ, शिट यार क्या रिप्लाई करूँ अब, इनको छोड़ो, क्यों पूरी फैमिली का मूड खराब हो जाएगा, बिकॉज आई एम द पर्सन जो हमें हर बात पे रिबल कर देता है घर पे, सो आई एम लाइक ओके इट्स ओके, छोड़ दिया जाता है उस टाइम पे कभी कभी, बट अभी मेरे को मौका मिल रहा है थॉट्स आगे रखने का, सो यस, तो आई डोंट थिंक कि मतलब हम आई एग्री कि बस में सीट्स रिजर्व होती हैं, बट आई गेस अगर आप महीने में 6-7 दिन ब्लीड कर रहे हो, एंड you are in so much pain, you have cramps, you have mood swings, you just don't know आपके अंदर क्या चल रहा है, तो आई डोंट थिंक इट्स रॉन्ग कि अगर हमारे सीट्स रिजर्व दें, इट्स नॉट समथिंग कि आप बोल सको कि अरे आपको सीट्स रिजर्व चाहिए, आपको इक्वालिटी भी चाहिए, क्या बात हो गई, इट्स सो रॉन्ग, तो आई डोंट थिंक दैट्स द राइट थिंग, लाइक जो लोग कहते हैं ना, मतलब आई एम नॉट सेइंग कि मेरे पापा फेमिनिस्ट नहीं है या फिर वो नहीं है, बट आई डोंट थिंक उनका जो फेमिनिस्ट का आइडिया है वो बिल्कुल सही है, तो मैं ऐसे बता रही हूँ कि मोस्टली पीपल, मैं ये नहीं कह रही कि बहुत सारे ऐसे लोग होते हैं जो बहुत अच्छे होते हैं, दे अंडरस्टैंड कि लोग क्या होते हैं, जैसे श्रुति ने कहा उसके पेरेंट्स भी बहुत अच्छे हैं, उसके पेरेंट्स उसको बहुत सपोर्ट कर रहे हैं, मेरे पेरेंट्स मेरे को बहुत सपोर्ट कर रहे हैं, दे लेट मी डू वॉट एवर आई वॉन्ट टू डू, बट एट द सेम टाइम हाँ कहीं कहीं चीजें खराब होती हैं, कहीं कहीं वो चीजें एग्री नहीं करते हैं, जहाँ हम लोग की चीज हम लोग उनसे एग्री नहीं करते, वो हमसे एग्री नहीं करते, आई रियली थिंक जनरेशन गैप है, यस है, और क्या शायद आप कभी उनको समझा नहीं पाओगे कि वो चीज गलत क्यों है जो आप बोल रहे हो, बट एट द सेम टाइम इट्स नॉट अबाउट कि वो पर्सन गलत, इट्स ऑल अबाउट कि उनको उन्हें स्टार्टिंग से चीज देखी है, उनके लिए बहुत नॉर्मल है ये चीज, या दैट्स इट।
राइट, सो मुझे जो 2 पॉइंट्स बहुत फैसिनेटिंग लगे, वो पहला पॉइंट जो आपने बोला कि इट्स मोर अबाउट थिंकिंग रादर देन होम एंड फैमिलीज। When I say that home, मैं जब home and family की बात करती हूँ, what I mean to say is that your thinking gets manifested somewhere, right? और वो आपके actions में ही आते हैं। अब जैसे अगर कोई कहता है कि a lot of people, it's so funny sometimes, we think that being feminist is not waxing your hands, sometimes not wearing your makeup. That's an idea of feminism that many people have, right? Many feminists themselves have. And then you have to understand that, is that feminism for you? Maybe someone who comes from a family where they've always been taught ki hair, body hair is not something good and therefore it needs to be removed. It's a personal choice as well, right? But sometimes personal choice bhi kitna personal hai, ye bhi ek question hai. So usi tarah se bhavna, like when you say ki my parents say or my father says that there is a limit to everything. There will
मम्मी
always be a
दरवाजा
limit
बंद
to
करके जाओ
everything.
यार,
Like,
मीटिंग चल
isn't
रही है,
there
यहाँ तो मशीन
always?
चला रही हो।
Equality, kitni equality? Justice, kitna justice? Freedom, kitna freedom? वो तो है ही है. But what one needs to understand is that when we talk about these limits, how restrictive are these limits? वो कितना आपको बांध रहे हैं, and how much are they not allowing you to see something? डिग्री में तो हमेशा ही वेरी करेगा, राइट? लाइक समवन्स पेरेंट्स माइट बी लाइक ठीक है 8 बजे तक चले जाओ, समवन्स पेरेंट्स माइट बी नो 6 बजे तक वापस आना है, कर्फ्यू टाइमिंग है। सब कुछ का होता है कि हैव गाय फ्रेंड्स बट डोंट हैव बॉयफ्रेंड्स, सम का होगा बॉयफ्रेंड ही नहीं चाहिए, गाय फ्रेंड ही नहीं चाहिए, घर पे बैठो सिर्फ लड़कियां फ्रेंड, किसी का होगा कि फ्रेंड्स ही नहीं बनाने। एनी दीज आर ऑल वेरिंग इन डिग्रीज, राइट? So that's number one. The second point जो आपने reservation का बोला about having seats or deprivation points या बस में reserve करना, metro में reserve करना. How many of you have actually, just went to a normal coach, metro car, and not been harassed, not been touched inappropriately? कितनी बार आप लोगों ने खुद सेकंड गेस किया कि यार उसने मुझे सच में पीछे से छुआ या फिर मेरे को बस फील हुआ? मे बी मैं ज्यादा तो नहीं सोच रही हूँ. बहुत बार होता है. In my, I was in Ramjas College, तो North Campus जाना होता था, तो I used to take Vishwavidyalaya wala line. And as a challenge, I said 3 months I'm going to travel in the normal coach because I had a fight with my friend and it was the same topic on reserving metro seats. And we both said, chalo, hum dono saath mein chalenge. The 3 months, that I traveled there, those were the most uncomfortable moments of my life. I cannot tell you. It was so hard for me to just sit and read my book because I could see someone constantly staring at me. Or I could feel that, someone was trying to touch me or just pass karna as a shoulder touch. Okay. So what I'm trying to say is that when you just reserving seats for women, it's also making conditions which are, you know, which are helping women to achieve what they want to achieve. तो अपने पापा को अगर आप ये जरूर समझाओगे, वो एक छोटा सा, there is this image that's there, equality and equity. There's a difference between the two. Feminists should be now talking about equity. Equality है, legally equal है हम लोग. But how much of equal are we really? So if your brother is able to travel in metro safe and you're not able to travel safe, then it's not just you, it's about the other people as well. I don't know why Indian parents and all the patriarchal people are so self-obsessed with the woman कि woman की ही गलती है. Accountability दूसरों पे भी दो ना. Others should also have the accountability of making you feel safe. So that's something that we can talk about. Anyway, कोई बोर हो रहा है, किसी को जाना है, शाम का टाइम है, please feel free to leave. ऐसा कोई restriction नहीं है.
एक्चुअली हम सबकी ही एक दूसरी मीटिंग है 5
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Yeah, we can cancel. कभी और आराम से भी we can talk. If anybody wants to talk, just ping me. We'll arrange a meeting. जरूरी नहीं है, it has to be NSS thing. Work hard बढ़ाना है
Actually,
तो कर लोगे.
I would like to say, like, I had to ask something.
हाँ हाँ.
So, Manya, can I stay?
She
स्टे
was to
व्हाट?
leave.
I want to stay. Like, I just want to ask something. So, if you all are leaving, can I ask this thing to her?
या श्योर.
Yeah, okay. So, you all may leave. Like, it's not an issue at all. Okay. So, hi, Sanjana. Um,
Hi.
Actually, I wanted to ask, like, as you like very precisely mentioned that personal is political, and that's the basic idea of feminism that we have been reading since pretty long. And there was a quote also, like, which I read in my first year, that child bearing is for women, but child rearing is for both the genders. So that basically means कि जितने भी household works and household responsibilities है, be it child or be it any other responsibility, that relies with both of the persons. Now, as and we also talked recently, like in this session only, we talked about the rebellion thing. So the social equality which we talk about, like, agar in a household, both the persons, both my brother and I are getting the same opportunities. Even my brother, मेरे को कहीं जाने का restriction नहीं है or something. Even my brother himself tells me कहीं market जाना है तो तुम ही जाओ. Although that's out of Alice, but still if he tells me कि नहीं market जाना है तो तुम ही जाओ, that's all is okay. But what about the prerequisite idea कि of the gender roles? Like अगर चाय बनानी है तो वो फिर मैं ही बनाऊंगी. If I rebel, like you said about rebellion, I totally agree. I can say that I won't do this. But if I won't do it, then my mom will do it. So it's again like I'm not helping her, and we are not like helping hands. We can help, but we are not helping. But my point is कि how to combat this basically, because it's the general thing which all of us, gender equality है घर में नहीं है, whether restrictions है नहीं है, we all face this thing, and we can't rebel against this basically. तो इसको फिर कैसे टैकल करेंगे? Like this idea is pretty old, but अब तक इसका कोई ऐसे as such execution तो नहीं दिखता है अभी. Like everything is online. I went at my Masi's place. My uncle is working from home and my Masi still goes to bank. They both are bankers. So still uncle पूरा दिन एक रूम में बैठ के काम करते हैं, and when my Masi comes, she has to take care of her baby. So how is this like justified? वो कोड तो कब का आ गया, but how are we combating that thing basically, and what can we do in that case?
Right. So, me being a feminist acknowledges that I still make tea at home. And sometimes it's out of choice. Sometimes I'm just forced to make it because I'm a girl. ठीक है, और मेरे को
Totally
पसंद
agree.
है. हाँ. Now, if you ask me, I don't know how to combat it because I have myself said कि मैं भी चाय बनाती हूँ. ठीक है. मेरी भी बहुत लड़ाइयाँ हुई हैं घर पे कि how to go about this and stuff. But I genuinely think that this is not a one woman fight. We often hear one man fight. This is not a one woman fight, right? इट सो हैपेंस कि हमें गिल्ट फील होता है कि यार हम काम नहीं करेंगे तो मम्मी को ही करना पड़ेगा, इससे अच्छा हम ही काम कर लेते हैं, राइट? There you need to understand that parenting strategies also matter a lot. Like, what's in your home? Do your parents have an understanding of you and your brother having to do equal work, right? And equal work, कभी कभी क्या होता है ना कि दिस इज वेरी फन, समटाइम्स इट सो हैपेंस दैट इक्वल वर्क में होता है बाहर का सारा काम भाई कर लेगा, घर का सारा काम आप कर
That's why what I
लीजिए,
wanted to say.
इक्वल हो गया.
Equal work
हाँ,
may be
इक्वल
technical
हो
things
गया.
boys will do.
एग्जैक्टली, जेंडर तो फिर भी नहीं है, राइट? सो मतलब जेंडर तो फिर भी है, इवन इफ यू से इट्स इक्वल डिविजन ऑफ वर्क. So there comes the concept of one understanding and rethinking that can be de-essentialized work. Now, I don't know, are you a political science student or a social science student by any chance?
Yeah.
Okay, alright, so you're doing what?
Political science honors from
Oh, okay. So you would have heard de-essentializing gender norms, right? Like किस तरह से हम लोग जो एक मतलब चीजों को एक नॉर्म समझ के चलते हैं, उसको हम किस तरह तरीके से ऐसा बना सकते हैं कि वो जेंडर नॉर्म ना रहे. सो फॉर इंस्टेंस देयर इज आजकल की फैमिली, आजकल की मैरिजेस अगर आप देखो, राइट? Marriages sometimes are between, there are happy couples too. Maybe आपके दीदी and भैया होंगे, they are married, both of them live in together and then they share their work also. And maybe it's not gendered also, like maybe आपका भाई भी बर्तन धो रहा होगा या आपकी बहन कुछ और कर रही होगी बाहर का काम and stuff. That's what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is that it's okay if you also sometimes purposely transgress the boundary. So for instance, when I had this challenge in front of me, अक्सर मैं क्या करती थी इस जानबूझ के, I used to take up the role that was given, that was usually understood as the man's work. So I used to purposely go out and change the tube lights. And I used to do that. I'm not putting myself on a very big pedestal कि हाँ देखो मेरे को tube light change करना आता है, नहीं. But what I'm trying to say is that sometimes you also need to get out of your comfort zone and you need to do something. Rebellion is not just putting the blame on others, it's also taking responsibility. So, are you willing to take the responsibility enough? And in that sense, if you have to do more work, women have to always do more work to prove themselves. Do it. I'll say do it. It's worth because आपको आप में confidence आएगा. I think that's more important. You're doing it for yourself. You're not doing it for others. So, just that.
In this case, I am lucky enough as my brother is pretty alsy. I mean, he's elder than me, but he's so alsy. Market भी जाना है, तुम ही जाओ. Tube light लगाना है, तुम ही लगाओ. उसके वाले काम भी मैं ही करूँ, and मेरे वाले तो मैं करूँ ही. So that chance I totally get, and you're like, yeah, that's all.
Alas to, like, is it gendered? Is laziness also gendered? That is also a question that you have for today. But ultimately, why realize karna ki you have to make the other person work. And sometimes if you want, just go on a strike, right? Just don't do the work. And kitna hi marenge, abuse ka case डाल दो. Now I even told you how to report it. You have solid excuses to make to your parents. Just kidding, don't do that. I have not said anything. Please record to नहीं हो रहा ना. Don't hold this against me.
ये लाइव हो रहा है, रिकॉर्ड नहीं होता, लाइव चल रहा है.
Yeah, so matlab, that's what I'm trying to say कि इसका कोई, like, there's no answer as such that I can have, and every parent is different and so is every child. So you have to talk it out with your brother. Maybe 2-3 लप्पड़ मारो तो समझ में आएगा. क्या पता, who knows? आलसी है तो just give the monkey its own taste of medicine. That's it. So do that probably. And you guys have a meeting, so please feel free to leave. It's fine. And it'll be fun. It's not necessary to have an NSS meet, but I love hanging out with girls. So just like call me up anytime. Right? I'll
Definitely,
share
ma'am.
my email
If you're like
ID if
willing to
you
have
guys
another
want.
session with us, you're more than welcome. We really like this.
Yeah, I'll just share in my email ID if anyone wants to connect.
Definitely, definitely. I also would like to add something like once I attended a session, like
Mm-hmm.
it was a short term course. In that, one thing which is still in my mind was we cannot change the scenario out there. Like even if our parents are too much modern, even our own sibling is supporting us to go out and everything, but still the mentality which is in there is not gonna change. So if we have the mentality, the only way out is if we have the next generation, like if we'll have our baby or something, so we don't do the same thing with our baby. That's the only way possible. Uske अलावा कुछ नहीं कर सकते. That's what that ma'am said, and that really hit me. Like मैं कितना भी समझा लूं, the thing I said, बाहर जाना है, okay, you can go, everything you can do, लेकिन still घर के काम is depends on you only. So she's basically said that whatever is going on, जो हो चुका है, that we cannot definitely change, but we just can make sure that we are not repeating the same thing. That's it.
That's very true, and that's a good note to end on. Very optimistic.
That's what I was
मुझे लग रहा था कि
about
मैं
to
बहुत
say, Shreya.
depressing.
That's what.
I don't want this to be a very depressing session, so it was a good way to end the session.
It
So
wasn't
thank you so much
actually.
for having me. No, it is optimistic, man. It's fine. Like you can just
No,
like
no,
climate
the
change.
session
हमारे
wasn't
हाथ में है.
depressing. That's what I said.
It wasn't
It was
depressing.
nice interacting with
Okay.
you.
Oh, thank you. Same here. And I really enjoyed having the session. It was really nice. So I hope you all also have nice thoughts. I don't want to hear मतलब कुछ तारीफ. कर लेना बाद में email ID दे दिया है. I'll definitely need some validation. I'm sitting empty at home. But if it has made you all think something, then I'm glad. That's it.
Thank you so
Right?
much, ma'am. I request everyone to please fill the feedback form, and I invite Deepika for the end.
Ma'am, before Deepika starts her note, I want to apologize first. We have to end this session so abruptly. It all happened so
Nice.
quickly.
That's
We really apologize from like the whole team of NSS. We really apologize.
अरे chill करो यार. Chill. It's fine. It's totally fine.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Anytime. Deepika, if you're going to call me ma'am, please don't do
With
that.
this, we have reached towards the end of today's video. Okay. I was in a guilt, like I started with hi Sanjana and everybody else was calling you ma'am. So
Just
मेरे को लगा,
Sanjana.
oh, I did a blunder.
No, please.
Okay,
Go
just
ahead,
let me
Deepika.
start.
Sorry to connect.
It's okay, ma'am. On behalf of Team Parivartan, the NSS unit of Mata Sundari College for Women, I, Deepika, would like to thank our speaker, Sanjana K.S., for sparing time from a busy schedule to be with us and enlightening us with her knowledge. Thank you so much for being with us. I would also like to thank our NSS officer, Dr. Mamta Chawla, ma'am, for gracing this event. Thank you, ma'am, and our audience as well, who has enthusiastically taken part in the event. It was such a great experience having you all here on a platform with us today. Thank you so much. Thank you, ma'am, for the very
I love the
informative
fact that you
Thank you so
presentation.
much,
considered when I
Sanjana.
took out, time to
Guys,
contribute.
please switch on your cameras. एक group photo कर लेते हैं.
I'm leaving. Is that fine?
एक group photo
You
कर
guys
लेते हैं बस.
Ma'am, we have to take a
Sure.
picture with you.
Guys, cameras on.